I'll turn it over to MP Petzer.
Thank you very much to everybody for attending today. I'm going to start off with CFIB, if that's all right. Mark Carney is a special advisor to the Liberal Party, but we all know that he's advising the Prime Minister, and he is the de facto finance minister of this government. He also happens to be sitting on the board of Stripe, as you were allocated to or alluded to earlier, and he's also said that they will not be passing on savings to consumers through a government-led initiative. So given that you guys represent small businesses that would stand to benefit from these cost savings, do you have any thoughts on Mr. Carney effectively saying no to his own government's initiative?
It is bizarre that we are in this situation where we have somebody who is a special advisor to the governing party that is also serving on the board of a company that is in direct conflict with a stated objective and promise from the government of which he is currently associated. I have to tell you, it is. I understand what a board member on a board of directors does, but this is super awkward. And I got to tell you, our bigger worry is for those for all of the other acquirers. Watch closely what is happening, and if this is allowed to stand, if Stripe does not change gears and actually flow the discounts that it is supposed to small merchants, the whole process is going to fall apart. So whether it is Stripe, its board, Mr. Carney, somebody needs to move here and make this happen. This is the Deputy Prime Minister that has said in a recent statement that it is the expectation of the Government of Canada that all participants in the ecosystem will pass on these savings down to the small businesses that deserve these savings. And now we have a party that is not doing that with this very close connection to the same players. It is really outrageous.
Yeah, it really is. This is the deputy finance minister who's trying to stave off a competitor for her own job. That's for sure. One more question for you here, and just kind of getting back to the whole point about cost to payment processors here. Like I talked to a couple small businesses back home in Swift Current, and one of them, when it's busy season, they pay over $7,000 a month just alone in their fees. Like that's crazy. That's almost three. They could hire three full-time employees yet, probably for minimum wage or just above, but they could hire 3 full-time employees. Would not be incumbent on them to make sure that people are adhering to these new initiatives?
Absolutely. And look, I will say that this isn't the first time we've seen this. There were, when the Conservative government put the first round of credit card fee reductions in place after negotiating it with Visa and MasterCard, there were a couple of processors that did decide not to pass them on. But I will tell you that we, CFIB, worked closely with Minister Flaherty's office at the time. I think it was also in the transition to Joe Oliver. And those savings ultimately were passed on after some pressure from both the finance minister's office and externally from us. That's what my expectation is for this round, and I'm waiting to see that happen at this point in time. To your point about this aggregate savings, I've talked to tons of small business owners who say they pay more in credit card processing fees than they take home from their business themselves. That's how big a fee this is, a cost this is to SMEs.
Crazy. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Genereux here now.
Merci, Mr. Badger. Madame Auger, j'aimerais qu'on revienne sur ce que
Ms.
vient de
Auger,
dire en anglais.
I'd like to come back to what you said in English and French, if we could.
Carney sur le board
The fact that Mr. Carney is on the board of directors of Stripe stands in contradiction, in fact, in conflict of interest with the current government's policies, given that he's special advisor to the government. Yes, that's in fact. Well, as you've mentioned, there is a conflict of interest. It's a bit odd to see this. And it isn't necessarily what we wanted to see at the end of the day. But if Stripe were to pass on the reductions as other acquirers in industry, then it is disappointing that they have taken that decision. Even though they may be honest, it is disappointing for the SMEs who are customers of that organization. But when you think about the payment ecosystem, Minister Freeland said that everybody should respect the rules, so it's all the more disappointing to see that some companies decide not to pass on these savings to the consumers. Last week, we heard from the Association of Retailers in Canada. They will not necessarily see that reduction of transaction fees as announced by the government. What do you think about that? I imagine that some of them are members of your organization. Well, what I said is that, yes, it is a victory. It's a step in the right direction to see that there are many SMEs in Canada that will benefit from the reductions, but we know that some of our members, in fact, many of them will not have access to this because the thresholds are not high enough. What would be the percentage of companies that won't benefit? Please go ahead.
So in our data at CFIB, we calculated exactly how many businesses will be under the threshold with Visa and MasterCard and how many will be over.
Combien vous avez de membres?
So 60% of our members roughly will see the reductions because they are under those thresholds. And about 40% of our members will not see the reductions because they are more sizable small firms. But it is a good, I will add that like any time government has put in place any kind of threshold or rule, it never in its first year delivers benefits to 100%. We have a $500,000 corporate tax threshold. We have a $1 million lifetime capital gains exemption. And our goal as an advocacy organization is to see those thresholds raised each year. But this is good news for the majority of small and medium-sized companies, and we receive it as good news. And it's sad that this one aspect of it is going to prevent it from being delivered to a good number of small firms, and that's why we need to make we need to get that reversed.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Turn. Monsieur Perkins.
Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, witnesses. Quick question to follow up on MP Massey's question for Mr. Stafford. Mr. Stafford, I have sought from the banks through this hearing to ask for the return on equity percentage, which would not betray revenue, cost structures, any of that. Would just know just how profitable they are. Do you see that as being proprietary, just having a return on equity percentage disclosed?
Well, I believe, sir, that we should be able to see that from their overall corporate financial statements, return on equity in the overall operation, but broken down according to the different divisions of it, I think is a reasonable ask. And, you know, they obviously don't want to share any more information with their competitors than they have to. And if they're making a very strong return in one line of business, that's going to attract the attention of their competitors. So I understand why they don't want to release it. But again, my point would be chartered banks are given a very special privilege, literally the power to create money through new lending. And in return for that, they should have special responsibilities to disclose to Canadians how that power is being used.
Yeah, that's a great point. They're a government-protected oligopoly, and with that protection comes responsibilities perhaps different if it were a free and open market in financial services.